My wife called it a corporate retreat. She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, standing at the bathroom mirror, mascara in hand, not even turning around when she told me. It's just a team building thing, babe. HR is making everyone go. 3 days in Scottsdale. You know how these things are. I did know. Or I thought I did. I made her coffee before she left. That's the part I keep coming back to. I woke up 30 minutes early, ground the beans she liked, the Ethiopian single origin she ordered online, and set it in her travel mug with the lid she always forgot to click shut all the way. I clicked it for her. I handed it to her at the door. She kissed my cheek and rolled her suitcase down the front walk without looking back. I stood there in my socks on the front porch, watching her taillights disappear around the corner. That was a Thursday morning. I want to tell you who I am first, because it matters. I'm not someone with a dramatic life. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. My dad drove a delivery truck for 30 years. My mom taught fourth grade. I got a scholarship to Ohio State, studied accounting, moved to Austin for a job at a mid-sized logistics firm. I'm the kind of person who knows every checkout clerk's name at my grocery store. I bring my own bags. I remember birthdays without Facebook reminders. I am, in the language my wife's family used when they thought I couldn't hear, a perfectly nice guy. Not impressive, not ambitious enough. Perfectly nice. My wife? I'll call her my wife here, because that's what she was, that's what she chose to be. She came from a different world. Her family had one of those last names that opened doors in certain rooms. Her father ran a commercial real estate firm that had been in the family for 3 generations. Her mother sat on 2 non-profit boards and chaired the auxiliary committee of a private golf club I'd never set foot in. Her brother had gone to Duke, and then Wharton, and then straight into the family business, and he treated me, from the first day we met, like something that had been tracked in on someone's shoe. His name was Whitfield, not a first name, a last name used as a first name, the way those families do. He was the kind of man who ordered for the table without asking anyone's preference. When my wife first brought me home for Thanksgiving, 2 years before we got married, her mother had asked what I did. I told her. She nodded slowly, like I'd said something in a foreign language she was too polite to ask me to repeat. Her father shook my hand once, firmly, then spent the rest of the weekend talking to everyone but me. Whitfield called me the accountant for the first 3 holidays, not cruelly, just casually, like it was my name. My wife laughed it off every time. That's just how they are, she'd say on the drive home, her hand on my knee. They're warming up to you. 4 years of marriage. They never warms up to me. I stopped bringing it up after a while. What was the point? You can't change people who don't think they need changing. I loved my wife. I told myself that was enough. We had our own life. Our house in South Austin, our Saturday morning farmer's market ritual, our standing Friday night takeout order. I focused on that. I built a fence around what was ours and tried not to look too long at what was outside it. So when she told me about the corporate retreat, I didn't interrogate it. She worked in marketing strategy for a tech company. Events, offsites, team travel, that was real. I had no reason to doubt her. I called my buddy Seth that Thursday afternoon and we watched the game at his place. I ate bad wings. I drove home, fed the cat, went to bed on my side without thinking too hard about the empty space next to me. Friday passed. Saturday morning, I was at the hardware store buying weather stripping for the back door when my phone buzzed. A notification: my wife's college roommate had tagged the photo. We followed each other on Instagram the way you do when you've been in someone's life long enough that unfollowing would be a statement. The photo was from the night before. A rooftop. Dallas, not Scottsdale. The skyline I recognized from the one-work trip I'd taken there. Those specific buildings, that specific angle of sky. Round tables with white linens, candlelight, a bar that looked like it cost more than our monthly mortgage. My wife was in the photo. She was standing with the champagne glass raised, laughing at something just off camera, wearing a dress I had never seen. Not a cocktail dress, a gown, dark green, off the shoulder, the kind of dress you do not bring to a corporate retreat, the kind of dress that takes 45 minutes and a second person to properly zip. I stood in the hardware store aisle with weather stripping in my hand and stared at my phone for what felt like a long time. The caption read, "Celebrating the Whitfields. XA proud of this family tonight. Whitfields. Her family, not her office." I tapped the photo. More faces. Her mother in pearls. Her father raising a glass, Whitfield himself at the center, arm around the woman I'd never met. And there, 3 rows back, laughing, gorgeous, completely present, my wife. My wife who was in Scottsdale. My wife who was in a team building thing HR was making everyone do. I put the weather stripping back on the shelf. I don't know why I remember that detail, but I do. I placed it back very carefully, like the aisle might fall apart if I wasn't precise. I paid for what was already in my basket and drove home. Here's what I did not do. I did not call her. I did not text her. I did not send a message to her roommate or to her mother or fire off something emotional that I couldn't take back. I learned something early in our marriage, and maybe this is the accountant in me, that you do not make your move until you understand the whole ledger. You don't react to one line item. You look at the whole picture first. So I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and I looked at the whole picture. There were more photos. The roommate had posted a story, since expired, but the tagged photo remained. Her cousin had a public account and had posted 3 images. Her mother had a private account, but her mother's friend, a woman I recognized from a charity auction my wife had dragged me to once, had posted 6 photos in a public slideshow with detailed captions. I read all of it. It was not a corporate retreat. It was a private dinner celebrating the expansion of her family's business into 3 new markets, a catered event at a private venue in the uptown neighborhood of Dallas, 70 guests, a string quartet, a custom cocktail menu named after each member of the immediate family. I scrolled until I found the menu cards someone had photographed. 4 signature cocktails, her father's, her mother's, Whitfield's, my wife's. A cocktail named after my wife at a family celebration I was never told about, in a city I was told she wasn't in, wearing a dress I had never seen. I closed the laptop. The cat jumped onto the table and knocked over my coffee cup. I watched the coffee spread across the table and didn't move to clean it up for a while. I'm not going to perform toughness here and tell you I wasn't hurt. I was, but the hurt wasn't what you might expect. It wasn't the sharp betrayal kind, the kind that makes your hand shake. It was slower. It was the specific pain of a suspicion you've had for years, suddenly gaining a body. All those holidays where I stood slightly outside the frame, all those times she'd said, "It'll just be easier if you don't come." All those times her family had referenced plans she was part of that I found out about only after the fact. I had always told myself I was reading into things, that I was being sensitive, that class difference was real, and navigating it just took time and patience and grace. Sitting at that coffee-stained table, I understood that I had confused her silence with loyalty. She wasn't protecting me from her family. She was protecting her family from the inconvenience of having to include me. I got up, cleaned the table, refilled my coffee, and thought for a long time. And then I did something small. Her company had an internal social platform, one of those tools that serves as a combination intranet and employee directory. She'd showed it to me once when complaining about a colleague. I wasn't an employee. I had no access, but it had a public-facing directory you could search by company name, a basic version for clients and contractors, visible to anyone. I found the name of her direct manager. Her manager was linked in public, the way most marketing professionals are. His account was full of content, strategy posts, speaking engagements, a conference he'd attended the previous week, a conference in Seattle, not Scottsdale, not Dallas. I searched for any mention of a company retreat in Scottsdale. Recent, past 30 days. Nothing from her company, nothing from her team. The conference her manager had attended was in Seattle. There were photos. Her team had not been to Scottsdale. I saved everything to a folder on my desktop, organized by date and source the way I organize anything. Then I called my father. My dad is not a dramatic man. He drives a truck. He has worked every day of his adult life. When I told him I thought something was wrong in my marriage, he was quiet for a few seconds and then said, "What do you know for sure and what are you guessing at?" I told him what I knew. He said, "Then wait for her to come home. Have the whole conversation when she's standing in front of you." I waited. She came back Sunday afternoon. Roller suitcase, sunglasses. She smelled like good lotion and too much airport coffee. She kissed my cheek the same way she kissed it when she left, and said the retreat had been exhausting but productive, and that she was going to shower and then maybe order Thai food. Was that okay? I said that was fine. I let her shower. I sat on the couch with the folder open on my laptop. The cat sat next to me. I scratched his ears. She came out in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel, and sat in the armchair across from me with her phone. Normal Sunday evening. We'd had thousands of them. I turned the laptop to face her. I watched her see it. She didn't panic. That was the thing. She went very still. The way someone goes still when they're calculating, not when they're frightened. She looked at the photos for a moment, then looked at me, and I saw something move across her face that I didn't have a word for then. I have one now, relief. Like she'd been waiting for this, like she was glad it was finally happening. It was a family thing, she said. I know, I said. Ely, it was just, that's not my name, I said quietly. We both knew that. She'd started to say a different name, something she called me in moments of deflection, and stopped herself. It was just easier, she said. Easier than what? She looked at her hands. Easier than explaining to my family why I needed to bring you. I want you to sit with that sentence for a moment. Not because it was cruel. I don't think she meant it cruelly, but because of how completely it revealed everything. Not easier than fighting for you. Not easier than standing up for our marriage. Easier than explaining why she needed to bring me. As if my presence at my own wife's family events was something she would need to justify. How many times? I asked. She understood the question. Her shoulders dropped a little. A few. How many is a few? The list was longer than I expected. A fundraiser gala in Houston the year prior. She'd told me it conflicted with a work deadline I didn't remember having. A birthday celebration for her father in Palm Springs. She'd said it was just her parents and her. Small and low-key, no spouses. A weekend trip to see her mother after her mother's minor surgery. I had offered to come, and she'd said there wasn't enough room at the house. I'm a numbers person. I counted 7 events over 3.5 years where I had been systematically excluded from her family's life and given a plausible alternate explanation. Did they ask you not to bring me? I asked. She was quiet for a beat too long. Or did you just not offer? She looked at the wall. Both, she said finally. Both things are true. That, more than any of it, is the sentence I've turned over the most in the time since. Both things are true. Her family didn't want me there. And she had at some point stopped fighting that. She found a way to hold 2 lives that didn't fully overlap, and told herself it was management rather than deception. I closed the laptop. I'm gonna stay at Seth's tonight, I said. She looked up. You don't have to. I need to think, I said. And I can't do that here. I packed a bag. She followed me to the bedroom doorway and stood there while I put 3 days of clothes into a duffel. She said things that she was sorry, that she knew it was wrong, that she'd handle it differently, that she loved me and hadn't meant for it to become what it had become. I heard her. I didn't respond to most of it, not because I was being cold. Because I had learned, from years of watching my father, that some conversations need more than one day. At the door, I turned around. Do they know? I asked. Does your family know you told me it was a corporate retreat? She shook her head. I nodded slowly. They will. I didn't say it as a threat. I said it as a statement of fact, the way you say the numbers don't balance. Not to punish anyone, just because it's true and pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. I drove to Seth. Yes, no questions. He made me a plate of leftover pasta, and we watched whatever was on television until I fell asleep on his couch. The thing about being the person who is always the most reasonable in the room is that people mistake your reasonableness for passivity. They assume that because you don't perform your pain loudly, you must not feel it deeply. They are wrong about this. I spent the next 2 days thinking very clearly. I am not going to tell you I handled everything perfectly from that point forward. I'm not. I had a conversation with my wife's brother, Whitfield, that I probably could have phrased more diplomatically. He called me, actually. I think my wife must have told him something. He used his corporate boardroom voice, the one that's meant to sound like a conclusion when it's really just a warning. He told me that family dynamics were complicated and that he hoped I wasn't going to be difficult about this. I told him, in a tone that matched his exactly, that I wasn't difficult, but I was done being optional. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, "Excuse me? 7 events in 3.5 years," I said. I've kept a list. Dates, occasions, what I was told, what was actually happening. I'm going to send a copy to your parents, to your sister, and to myself. Not as a threat, just so everyone is working from the same information. He started to say something else. I thanked him for calling and hung up. I did send that email, it was 2 pages. It was completely factual. Dates, locations, the cover stories I'd been given, what the events had actually been. No emotional language, no accusations, just the ledger laid out plainly. I don't know what happened in that family in the days after. I can guess. My wife called me 4 times in the 48 hours after I sent it. I answered each call. She was upset. Then her mother was upset. Then things were quiet. What I know is this: when I finally came home and we sat at our kitchen table together, same table where I'd watched the coffee spread that Saturday morning, she said her family had been uncomfortable with the email. Good, I said. She looked at me a little differently then. I don't know if it was respect or something else. Maybe she hadn't known I had that in me. Maybe I hadn't known either. We're still figuring it out. I'll be honest about that. I don't have a clean ending to give you because life doesn't usually come with one. We started seeing a therapist, not the couples counselor type who validates everything equally, but a good one who asks the uncomfortable questions and lets the silence sit after them. My wife has had hard conversations with her family that she should have had years ago. I don't know what was said. That part is hers. What I know is that one morning last month, she told her mother we wouldn't be attending a family event, a brunch, something low stakes, because I hadn't been included in the invitation. She said it plainly. No apology. No elaborate explanation. Her mother called back 30 minutes later with an updated invitation that included my name. It sounds small. I know it sounds small. But I thought about my father when that happened. 30 years of driving a truck, of not being the most impressive person in any room, of knowing exactly who he was anyway. He used to say that the only things worth keeping are the things that don't require you to make yourself smaller to fit. I am not smaller than I was before any of this. If anything, I'm more myself. More certain of what I won't absorb in silence anymore. More clear on the difference between grace and self-erasure. The cat is sitting on the coffee table again, where he's not supposed to be. The back door still lets in a little cold air when the wind comes from the north. I never did finish weather stripping it. Some things you put down in a hardware store aisle and come back to later. I'll get to it. I used to think that keeping the peace was the same thing as being a good partner. I was wrong about that for a long time. There's a version of me, the one who made coffee at 5:30 in the morning and clicked her travel mug shut and waved from her front porch in socks. Who would have found that email in my laptop folder and closed it? Who would have told himself that confrontation creates more damage than silence? Who would have absorbed it, moved on, and found a way to file it next to all the other things he'd decided not to name? That version of me had a word for what he was doing. He called it grace. It wasn't grace. It was just a slower form of disappearing. What I've come to understand is that the choices we make, not the dramatic ones, but the small, daily, almost invisible ones, eventually accumulate into the life we're actually living. Every time I accepted an excuse without asking a follow-up question, I was making a choice. Every time I told myself that's just how her family is, I was making a choice. I was choosing, over and over, to be someone who could be left out of the frame without too much trouble. And because I kept making that choice quietly, the people around me had no reason to stop making theirs. That's not a judgment on my wife. I mean it. She didn't build that pattern alone. She built it in the space I kept leaving available. Cause and effects doesn't always look like a villain and a victim. Sometimes it looks like two people who never had the direct conversation that would have changed everything. Until one Saturday morning when a photo shows up and the conversation becomes unavoidable. The email I sent to her family wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that, even now. It was accountability, which is a different thing entirely. Revenge wants the other person to suffer. Accountability just wants everyone to be working from the same information. 2 pages, locations, locations, the cover stories I've been given, no emotional language, just the ledger. I had been an accountant long enough to know that the most powerful thing you can put in front of someone is an accurate record. What took actual courage, more than sending the email, more than the conversation with Whitfield, was deciding that I was worth the disruption. That my presence in my own marriage deserved to be treated as something other than an inconvenience to be managed. That's not a small thing to decide, especially when you spent years in rooms where people like you are considered optional. My father never finished college, he drove a truck, he was never the most impressive man at any table, but he was present, completely and without apology, in every room he belonged in. I watched him do that my whole life and somehow still had to learn it for myself. The back door still needs weather stripping. The cat still sits on the coffee table. Some things you put down and come back to, but I come back to them now as someone who knows the difference between patience and erasure. And that difference, I found, changes everything.